can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. So today's video, we're going to be talking about Blood Hunt number 4, written by Jed McKay, with art by Pepe Larraz and color by Marte Gracia. So this issue, we finally get a hard answer to what the hell is going on with Blade. And while I have said pretty much since day one, this has not been our Blade. This is a Blade that is very clearly possessed. And while the story details have been kind of drip fed over the course of Blood Hunt, as well as its many various and sundry tie-ins, actually I say various and sundry, but it's actually really only more like 1 or 2 tie-ins that are really kind of hinted at it or given any indicator, though we did get a tie-in this week that basically all but confirmed it. If you had not already read Blood Hunt number 4, Midnight Suns basically is like, yep, totally not Blade. At least, you know, not Blade doing what everyone thinks he's doing. And when we get to this issue, we discover that yes, it is in fact Blade possessed. He says it himself. He actually says it out loud for everyone to hear. And while the reveal of who is actually possessing Blade, I think, is not really terribly interesting, at least not to me. I mean, yes, it's someone who, while I didn't initially think that this character was going to be the culprit, once we started seeing more of this character in the tie-ins, it started becoming more painfully obvious. If you see my video for Black Panther Blood Hunt number 2, which if you have not, you can check it out up here. But in that video, I kind of talked about it a little bit, how they were kind of setting it up. And now we see with the rise of the Temple of the First Blasphemy, it becomes even more obvious that yes, it is Varne. And the thing that's kind of funny about this too is that the way that it's all set up, it basically was kind of given away. If you're anyone who's even remotely familiar with Varne, to be fair, while I am, it's not a character that I think about a whole heap of a lot. Like, I don't just sit around thinking, man, I really wish they would bring back Varne. It's like, it's a character I just don't care about. So it wasn't really at the forefront of my mind. But once we started seeing more Varne, I was like, okay, yeah, cool. And I think even maybe, God, this was probably 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Blerd caves ago, I think I saw someone in the chat bring it up, and I'm pretty sure that, you know, someone in the comments for previous Blood Hunt videos has probably brought it up. For those unfamiliar of a previous attempt to take over Blade's body from the 1994 issue of Blade, the Vampire Hunter number 5, it's funny because yes, this was thwarted. And while there's another attempt, we've never seen that attempt. It's something that's very likely happened off panel or out of story, and we'll not find out about it until it's convenient enough to be told about it. But I do think the whole idea of Varne being the first vampire who's taking over what is effectively the first Daywalker, there's a lot of synchronicity here. I mean, it makes sense. I might not like the decision, you know, to go with Varne. I think it's kind of like whatever. I mean, I particularly don't find it interesting, but I don't think it's a bad choice. It's just not the most palatable one, at least not to me. But going back, looking at it with the benefit of hindsight, knowing that it's Varne, it makes a lot of the mentions of old Atlantis, something that I feel like if you played a drinking game to how many times Blade brings up old Atlantis over the course of Blood Hunt, I'm not saying you would get alcohol poisoning, but I will say you will be moderately drunk, regardless of your alcohol tolerance. But yeah, I don't recommend doing it. I honestly don't. I don't recommend it. I feel like the execution of Varne being revealed as the one who is truly possessing Blade makes more sense than some other reveals that Jed McKay has done in recent memory. I say this largely because at the very least, we have seen Varne teased. It's been set up a bit more properly, I think, than some other things I've seen. Like, I can't help but think back to the Vengeance of Moon Knight number 4 issue where the Shroud just is revealed to be Moon Knight as if like it was something that made sense. Like I said, not a bad thing, just it was things that just, I was like, okay, all right, I'll go with it, yeah, whatever. But getting back to the ritual of it, we don't know what this ritual was that had set Blade up so perfectly to become Varne this time, but what's funny to me about it is that we have had 2 recent occurrences that could have set this up. Whether or not any of these are true or not, I have no idea, but I will definitely say that if you've been keeping up with Brian Hill's Blade series, the fact that Blade was playing fast and loose with the Lightbringer sword, a sword that is literally the essence of Lucifer himself given shape. It was corrupting him and kind of turning him into a different type of person. that would have been a really easy low-hanging fruit, to pull down. There was also in the recent Danny Lore written series Bloodline, Daughter of Blade, there's an instance where a clone of Deacon Frost is performing a ritual on Blade, though that ritual is not to bring back Varne, it is to grant the power of Blade, which effectively is just the daywalking aspect of him, to the vampires. That was what that was all in aid of, and it did not work. Though one could make an argument that maybe Deacon Frost performed the wrong ritual, because there is a point where it's brought up that it didn't work, or that what was supposed to happen didn't happen. I don't know if it's going to call back to that, considering Bloodline's inclusion in this event. It's not out of the spectrum of possibility. I think that is actually more likely than the stuff from Brian Hill's Blade, but hey, what are we gonna do here? Either way, Varne is going to use the Temple of the First Blasphemy to complete what he started in the flashback sequence of Black Panther Blood Hunt number 2. It seemed like he was trying to ascend to godhood. I mean, technically he kind of is, but what he's actually trying to do is to become the unliving Dark Force. He's basically brought all this Dark Force together, the Dark Force he's used to surround the entire planet. He has taken it in upon himself to elevate himself to what is effectively a god tier status. Whether or not this works out for him, I think it's safe to say it won't, but regardless of whether it would or wouldn't have, in the event of all this, we've learned a lot of things. For one, and I feel like it's kind of, spoilers for the upcoming Black Panther Blood Hunt number 3, but apparently the heart-shaped herb that Black Panther gains his powers from is actually turning back the vampirism within himself, which is why he is able to do some of the things he has done against Blade in this issue. He's able to fight back against him. He's able to stand up to Blade where before he normally wouldn't be able to. This honestly is not a terribly surprising thing. I kind of half expected this, but yeah, I kind of more expected to pay more dividends in Black Panther Blood Hunt number 3, but I feel like the way all this was kind of laid out, it probably made more sense to save the reveal for the core issue of Blood Hunt rather than save it for the tie-in issue. I feel like the tie-in issue is just going to show us more how it is happening as opposed to the why it is happening. And also Thor is back on the table. Black Panther is able to unimpale Thor's forehead, and they're able to get the Avengers back on the menu and do some avenging, which is always a good thing when there's a lot of avenging to be done. However, the other thing that's of note here in this issue is Doctor Doom. This is actually the first time we have really seen much of Doctor Doom in the core issues of Blood Hunt. We have seen him over on the Strange Academy side of things more recently, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a second. But the thing that is of note here is that we saw in the previous issue that Doctor Strange and Clea were going to go speak with Doctor Doom, and now we know exactly what it is that they're asking him for, and we knew it was going to be help, but we didn't know what the consequences of asking for this help were going to be. And Doctor Doom makes it pretty obvious that he wants the thing he has been angling for, it feels weird to say this, but I feel like the last 2 or 3 decades. Doctor Doom has been angling to become the new Sorcerer Supreme. Like, this is something that I feel like, and I'm sure it's happened in other instances prior to this, but I feel like sometime in and around like the late aughts or maybe like the early 2010s, there was a story arc where Doctor Strange was giving up being the Sorcerer Supreme and he was going to pass it on to somebody. And there was a lot of different people who were up in the running. There was Wanda Maximoff. Dr. Doom was angling for it hard body, but ultimately it went to Dr. Voodoo. And even throughout Dr. Voodoo's own series, Dr. Doom would kind of pop in and out and make snide remarks about how it should have been him. And then later on, when Doctor Strange had expired, Dr. Doom came angling again. Dr. Doom has wanted to be the Sorcerer Supreme for quite some time now. In every instance, it always kind of is played as though Dr. Doom wants to be Sorcerer Supreme for selfish reasons, but I do often feel like sometimes one could very easily see some of the ties and nods to his desire to bring back his mother. And a lot of the things that, Dr. Doom does, sometimes they do always kind of come back to his mother, something that he has been unable to get back with all of his vast knowledge of magic and technology and various and sundry other things. he is yet to be able to pull this off, and his mother has been dead for quite some time. For those unfamiliar with Cynthia Von Doom, she died back in 1977's Marvel Comics Super Special #1. While the circumstances of her death have to do with magic, it's not necessarily why she actually died. She was actually unalived by being stabbed, but the whole thing is that she was a powerful sorceress, and she was manipulated by Mephisto, and thus when she died, her soul was trapped in hell, more specifically in Mephisto's hell. Now, I say bring her back. The truth of the matter is that while she was actually freed from eternal damnation in hell at the hands of Mephisto, back during 1989's Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom Triumph in Torment, while she is no longer a denizen of hell, she is still in fact dead. So if there's any one thing Doctor Doom could want the power of the Sorcerer Supreme to do, it would be to bring back his mom. And the weird part about this is I feel like he shouldn't need to be Sorcerer Supreme in order to pull this off. I feel like if he actually really applied himself, he could find some kind of way to do it, but I imagine it has more to do with his Romani heritage and the Romani heritage of his mother as to why he's probably got to go about it a very specific way. This is me just guessing here, but yes, this is probably why he wants it. It's usually why he wants anything. Now, to be clear, we never see Doctor Strange hand over the reins of being Sorcerer Supreme to Doctor Doom. We don't see it happen, but I think it's safe to say we will see a transferal of Sorcerer Supreme status, because if we actually go back to earlier this year in January, when Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanzig's Timeless #1 came out, there was a tease. Doctor Doom wielding the Cloak of Levitation and the Eye of Agamotto, and the Avengers kneeling before him. Now, a lot of the things that are usually hinted at in tease and Timeless, sometimes they are just, oh, hey, it's this one thing that's gonna happen for all of 5 seconds, and it'll probably never be seen or heard from again after it occurs, or it can even be allusions to status quo changes. We saw this with the X-Men. The X-Men were, the whole From the Ashes stuff was teased in this year's Timeless one-shot. So yeah, this is stuff that has been a long time coming and is not really surprising in the least if you have read that one shot. Regardless, they do have most of the things they need. As it is mentioned, to get rid of the Darkhold is going to take a lot of powerful sorcerers, and this is why Doctor Doom approached the children from the Strange Academy in the Strange Academy Blood Hunt #2. Now, there is a mention that Doctor Doom makes of having the Living Darkhold, but the Living Darkhold, as we know, right now is locked in mortal combat with a new character that was introduced in this event named Pia, a vampire who was hiding that she was a vampire. But her and the Living Darkhold are about to get into a throwdown, and while Doctor Doom claims that he has the Living Darkhold, I don't think he actually does, or at least he's about to, but I feel like that's all stuff that's going to be sussed out in the Strange Academy Blood Hunt #3 issue, and we'll deal with that from there. But that said, I do feel like I have unlocked the code to understanding how Jed McKay writes. I want to make sure I say this before I actually say what I'm going to say. I'm going to preface this, even though I know it's going to be taken completely out of context by somebody. It's always going to happen. It's never not going to happen. I want to make something very clear. I'm not saying Jed McKay can't write. I want to make sure I put that front and center, because I know someone's going to come and be like, oh man, did you hear Blerd Without Fear was flaming Jed McKay saying he can't write? No, I'm not saying that. I've just kind of discovered the opening thread with Jed McKay. I feel like I'm in Demon Slayer. I see the thread of how Jed McKay writes, so it makes it a little bit easier to figure out what he's going to do or what he's not going to do with the story. And he's kind of proven it to us over the past year or two, but I never really thought much of it until today. And it's that something I kind of mused about with his Moon Knight series, the Vengeance of Moon Knight series more specifically. In that series, the whole mystery was, who is the new Moon Knight? Who could it possibly be? And a lot of people had a lot of different ideas. I had a lot of different ideas about who I thought it was going to be. And while I think the most obvious, and maybe even in a lot of cases the most, I don't want to say correct, but it's the only word I can really think of, I would just say the more palatable choice, well, I think those choices are the ones I usually go for in terms of thinking like, oh, who makes the most sense in this spot. I feel like Jed McKay goes more for who is the character people least expect. Like if ever there's a mystery of which character is doing this, like who is obfuscating things behind the scenes, I think a safe assumption is to always just think it's going to be a character no one's checking for, because that's what happened in Avengers of Moon Knight. It was like, oh no, it's not any of the 5 other characters it could potentially be that would make a lot of sense. No, it's a character no one was even thinking about. The Shroud, a character no one would assume is the new Moon Knight. Like there was just no way, and not to mention it was a character that wasn't even so much as teased in any point in Jed McKay's run, except for like a throwaway appearance in a random issue. I think it was like Moon Knight #7. I don't rightfully remember, but yeah, point of the matter is that, yeah, that's just kind of what you can expect, and you get that here. Varne is not the character I think a lot of people think about. No one's really checking for that. Let's just be honest with ourselves here. It's funny to me that, in light of all this, it's like, yeah, it's a deep cut character. No one's gonna be checking for Varne. Another thing that happens in this issue that I thought was kind of funny, just to lend further credence to how Jed McKay writes, it's not just the Varne stuff, it's not just the stuff with Moon Knight and Avengers of Moon Knight #4. I would also say another thing that you could probably go with too is what happens with Huntress Moon and Tiger in this issue when they break into Asgard. We saw that they kept musing about, oh, a secret person. They wouldn't say who that person was, and honestly, it almost kind of made no sense considering, well, once again, just like with the Shroud, Wrecker, I think, did show up in one of the previous issues of the Moon Knight series, the core Moon Knight series, but once again, like for 2 seconds, if that. And it's one of those things, this was a character who is a deep cut. Once again, I want to make sure I'm clear when I say this. I'm not saying the inclusion of Wrecker in this, to swerve readers is bad. This is a character that once you kind of think about it, it's like, oh yeah, no, this is, okay, this tracks. But it's one of those things, I feel like swerving with the deep cuts is done just to make sure no one can guess who it's gonna be, which, I mean, I get that's kind of what every writer wants to do. You want to try and catch people off guard, but I feel like this is almost like trying to yank us. It's not swerving, it's more like a yank. And like I said, once again, I want to make it clear, because I like I said, I know people are gonna be like, whoa, look, he said it, Jed McKay doesn't know how to write. I'll say it again, not saying that. I have long been saying that Jed McKay is one of the best writers at Marvel, and the second I give 1 ounce of criticism, someone's gonna be like, see. No, it doesn't change anything. I still think Jed McKay is one of the better writers at Marvel. I put him right up there with cats like Al Ewing, Donny Cates, Brian Hill, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Eve Ewing, Gail Simone. I feel like there's a lot of really good writers, at Marvel, but that doesn't mean that they can't make mistakes or do things that I don't like. I mean, let's walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, people. Either way, using Wrecker and his Asgardian crowbar to break Khonshu out of prison, it makes sense. It's a thing that happens, and it all gets us to the point we knew was coming anyway. The unleashing of the Fist of Khonshu, all of the dead revenants of the Fist of Khonshu that have been, on the back burner since Khonshu was locked away in Asgard like 5 ever ago. As a matter of fact, I think that story arc ended at the tail end of 2020 almost. So yeah, he's been locked up for a good while now, like literally almost 4 years, damn near to the date. And yeah, he's out, he's back. Khonshu is free, the moon can shine once more, and of course, the Fist of Khonshu are on the loose, including Mark Spector. This is not a surprise to me. We knew this was gonna happen. We knew this was likely. I do appreciate that he is back in not the all white drip, but he's in the, kind of, I think this was roughly in around time, I think when Jeff Lemire was writing Moon Knight, the white cloak with the black underneath, so like the white on black, which I'm with. I like it. I rocks with it. That's everything. And once again, I don't think the story is bad. I mean, I have a lot of criticisms of Blood Hunt, but I would be a liar if I said that I don't enjoy it more than I have most events lately. Event fatigue is a real thing. I feel like if you always have events, then nothing is really an event. I feel like, because once we get done with this, there's probably going to be another Marvel Comics event that's going to come out almost immediately after this, and we'll be right back to square one. I would not be surprised. And, it just is what it is. I definitely think that Blood Hunt, as it is right now, is it the greatest thing I've ever read? No. Is it the worst thing I've ever read? No. Does that necessarily make it mid? Nah, not exactly, but I would say if it was anything, I think it's just a little, to the right of the middle. you know, kind of more on the plus side of the middle, if it is anything else. But yeah, once again, you know, criticism, it can't be nuanced. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.